Golden State Warriors fan, take a deep breath, because what has just been confirmed completely changes the scenario that has been hurting this season. I know the pain you feel. Nights watching the team stall in attack, decisions that don't make sense, the feeling that the project stopped in time while the rest of the league accelerated. But today, the story changes. The trade rumors that have exploded are not empty noise. They are response, answer to what wasn't working, to what needed to change, to what you had been silently asking for. Stay with me until the end, because what's on the table now could be exactly the adjustment that gives hope, competitiveness, and a future back to the Warriors. Before following, if you are real Warriors, subscribe to the channel now, leave a like, and activate the bell, because this makes the video reach more fans who are experiencing this same pain and want to understand what is really happening behind the scenes. This is quick, costs nothing, and completely changes the reach of this content, and it doesn't go away. What comes now explains why these rumors aren't common, who might be involved, and how this decision could redefine the future of the Golden State Warriors. Stay with me until the end, because every detail matters. First of all, let me invite you into this conversation directly, almost face-to-face, because what is happening now with the Golden State Warriors is not just another market rumor, it is not social media noise, much less the typical trade deadline foam. There is something deeper, more delicate, and at the same time, more dangerous taking shape behind the scenes of the franchise. And the more you look at the bigger picture, the harder it becomes to ignore the feeling that time is slipping through your fingers. In the last few hours, it was practically confirmed that the Warriors board does not intend to trade Jimmy Butler before the trade deadline. And when you stop to analyze it coldly, without emotion, without attachment to names or beautiful stories, this decision raises very serious questions about the direction of the project. It's not about whether or not you like the Butler. It's not about leadership or charisma. It's about sporting logic, asset management, and above all, responsibility with a title window that is no longer wider. Let's be honest here. Jimmy Butler is 36 years old and has just suffered a serious knee injury, a ligament rupture that historically does not forgive players of that age. It's not pessimism, it's history. The body does not respond in the same way, the recovery process is slower, and the return to the previous level, when it happens, is rarely complete. Still, the Warriors seem willing to go through this risk as if it didn't exist. Before the injury, it's true, Butler was playing at a very high level, scoring efficiently, defending at a high level, organizing the team in moments of chaos, and fitting perfectly into the system. Perhaps this is exactly the most painful point in this entire story. His value has never been as high as it is now. The numbers were there, the impact was visible, and the recent memory of good performances was still fresh in the minds of the other franchises. But basketball doesn't live on memories. He lives on projections. And every projection involving a 36-year-old winger with a heavy contract and a serious injury carries more risk than safety. Holding this asset now is assuming that the return will justify the investment. It's betting that the Butler of the future will look a lot like the Butler of the recent past. And that is an extremely dangerous bet. The most intriguing thing is the criteria that, according to information, the board would be using to even consider an exchange. Basically, I would only give up Butler if the possibility arose of bringing in a name from the absolute top of the league, like Giannis Antetokounmpo or LeBron James. When you hear this, the feeling is of disconnection with the reality of the market. Not because these players aren't extraordinary, but because the scenarios simply don't exist in a concrete way. Giannis is contractually tied, he is the face of the franchise in Milwaukee, and even in an extreme scenario, the required package would be unattainable for the Warriors. LeBron, in turn, has built a lifetime in Los Angeles and has family, business, and symbolic ties to the Lakers. Imagining a trade involving these names in the middle of the season sounds more like fantasy than strategy. Meanwhile, on the court, reality imposes itself mercilessly. Without Butler, the team exposes defensive weaknesses that were being masked. The intensity drops, holes appear, and the impression is of a heavy, aging squad that has difficulty sustaining pace against younger, more aggressive teams. That recent defeat at home, with the defense constantly being exploited, was not an isolated accident. It was a wake-up call. Stephen Curry remains a gaming genius, but he's also almost 40 years old. You can't demand that he carry alone a structure that cannot be sustained collectively. Draymond Green is no longer the same physically, and the young people who should take the lead still fluctuate too much. Jonathan Kuminga, for example, is experiencing an internal impasse, with a falling market value and an increasingly delicate situation. In light of all this, the question that remains is simple and uncomfortable. What exactly is the plan? Because keeping everything as is doesn't seem like a winning strategy. Betting that the current squad, aged and with key players injured, will compete on equal terms with the emerging forces from the West sounds too optimistic. This is not about discrediting the history of the franchise, but about recognizing the current moment. What draws the most attention is how emotional factors seem to be weighing on decisions. There is a lot of talk about locker room presence, leadership, a positive environment. All of this matters, of course, but when the title window is closing, the criteria needs to be different. Big franchises win because they know how to be cold when necessary, because they understand that time doesn't wait and that excessive attachment takes a high toll. There were intermediate paths, exchanges that did not involve miracles, possibilities of converting Butler's current value into youth, squad depth, draft picks, or pieces that would ease the burden on Curry. They would not be popular movements, perhaps not even emotional, but they could represent competitive continuity. Holding the Butler now means taking on a huge cost in the future, both financial and sporting. It means taking the risk of going into next season paying too much for a recovering player while the rest of the league moves, adjusts, and evolves. And at this rate, each month lost is one more step towards the end of an era. For the fan, the feeling is confusing. There is affection, there is respect for what these players represent. But there is also fear. Fear of seeing a dynasty end not because of a lack of talent, but because of hesitation. Fear of looking back in a few years and realizing that there were alternatives, but they were not explored. Warriors has always been a franchise marked by boldness, for decisions that defied common sense. Maybe that's exactly what's missing right now. No more infinite patience, no more hope in unlikely scenarios, but courage to accept reality and act on it. Ultimately, this situation with Jimmy Butler isn't just about a trade that didn't happen. It is a symbol, a portrait of how the franchise sees its future. Either this is part of an extremely calculated plan that no one outside the board can see, or it is the beginning of a period of painful stagnation. Time will respond. But the clock doesn't stop. And when it comes to the title window in the NBA, every second counts. And that is exactly why this moment cannot be treated as another ordinary chapter of the season. What's at stake here isn't just a trade. It's not just the future of a specific player. It's the direction of an entire era. The Golden State Warriors have reached that point where each decision weighs like a watershed. Either the franchise reacts now, with clarity, courage, and a cold reading of the scenario, or it runs the risk of seeing this historical window close slowly and painfully. If you feel this discomfort, this mixture of concern and expectation, it's because you understand the scale of what is happening. Nothing here is random. Every rumor, every silence from the board, every blocked movement says much more than it seems. And that's exactly why you can't stop here. In the pinned comment, I left the playlist Golden State Warriors News Today, where I delve into every detail, every behind the scenes, and every update that really matters. It's not an empty headline, it's not baseless speculation. It's context, reading the scenario, and everything that can define the future of the Warriors in the coming months. Join this playlist now, stay with me in this coverage, and follow in real time everything that could change the fate of the franchise. Because this story is still far from over, and the next chapters could be decisive.